The man had an accident while repairing the electrical circuit. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself lying in a hospital bed. But before he could recover his senses, the doctor's next words struck him like a thunderbolt.
You've tested positive for HIV, which is the virus that causes AIDS.
Doctor. Sivard said that Ron had only 30 days left to live. Hearing this, Ron instantly flew into a rage, declaring that as a hardcore cowboy, how could he possibly contract that kind of disease? Therefore, Ron didn't take Doctor Sivard's words to heart at all. He simply believed Doctor Sivard had mixed up the blood samples and mistook someone else's for his. He refused to listen to any explanation and got up to leave immediately. As he walked out, he threw the diagnosis report directly at Dr. Sivard. On the first day of his confirmed diagnosis, Ron was completely unaffected by the news. He continued to have fun with his friends and bar hostesses, as if the word AIDS had nothing to do with him. It was only after he had his fill of fun and shared the story with his friends that a casual remark from a friend forced him to re-examine himself.
Mistake.
Although Ron was very unwilling to admit it, his failing body could not lie. With an uneasy heart, he hastily said goodbye to his friends and immediately rushed to the library to look up information about AIDS. He had to prove that he did not have the disease. Looking at the dense text on the computer, he didn't dare miss a single letter. But the data clearly stated that AIDS is not only spread among the same sex, intravenous injection and a chaotic private life are also possible causes. He instantly recalled the girl he dated before, whose arm was covered with dense needle marks. So the hospital's test report was not wrong. He really had AIDS. Meanwhile, a pharmaceutical company launched a drug called AZT. Currently, the drug is in the animal testing stage and has been found to eliminate the HIV virus in animals, so they plan to conduct human trials in the hospital. But when Dr. Sivard asked about side effects, the pharmaceutical representative said that those were only side effects in animals, and it was currently uncertain regarding humans. However, AZT is also the most effective drug tested against AIDS so far, so the FDA also agreed to allow AZT to undergo double-blind human experiments in the hospital. That is, some people use AZT and others use ordinary vitamins to compare the efficacy and side effects of AZT. Hearing the news, Ron rushed to the hospital without stopping. He found his attending physician, Eve, desperately hoping to buy AZT here. But Dr. Eve stated that the drug is currently in the experimental stage, and even she has no right to buy it. Moreover, whether AZT's efficacy outweighs its side effects is currently unknown. But at this moment, Ron couldn't care less about side effects. He began to lower his posture, begging Dr. Eve to sell him some, even at a higher price, but Dr. Eve still couldn't help. Then Ron took out a piece of paper from his pocket and asked one by one about the special drugs from abroad he had found online. Without exception, these drugs were not approved by the FDA and had no purchasing channels. Looking at Ron's almost desperate eyes, Dr. Eve told him about an AIDS support center, hoping he could adjust his mindset there.
Some dying. You telling me to go get a hug from a bunch of faggots? Good day.
Ron, who failed to get medicine, was in low spirits. But when he stepped into the bar where his brothers gathered, he pretended to be very strong and greeted them as if nothing had happened. However, his friends all looked strange at this time. It turned out that the news of his AIDS had spread. Ron angrily wanted to go up and argue, but his former friends began to avoid him one after another. They weren't afraid of hurting Ron. They were afraid of the AIDS virus on Ron. Ron was furious at the brothers who betrayed him, but since things had come to this, he was powerless. Just like that, his life changed completely. No friends, no sympathy, and no way out. His world was left with only himself. Desperate, Ron went to the support center, hoping to find a way to survive there. But as soon as he entered the door, a young man walked towards him affectionately, wanting to give him a hug.
Tinkerbell. Knock your teeth so far that goddamn thought you commit you with your asshole.
Subsequently, he just took some materials about AIDS from the table and turned away in a hurry. Ron, the once unrestrained bull rider, also revealed deep fear when facing death. He had no other way. The only thing he could do was pray to God for a chance to live. And God seemed to really see his despair, letting him meet a hospital cleaner in the bar. The cleaner would secretly sell AZT to Ron at a high price when taking out the trash every day. In this way, Ron successfully got the AZT he dreamed of. After taking the medicine, Ron felt relaxed and satisfied as never before. He rushed to the construction site without stopping, planning to return to his normal life. But looking at the hostile former friends in front of him, Ron felt that this job wasn't necessary, and he could just take time to relax. But soon it was the 28th day. Ron's medicine was almost bottoming out. He hurriedly found the cleaner again, hoping to buy some more medicine to take home. But the cleaner said he could never get the medicine again. Ron thought the other party wanted more money, so he took out all his savings, saying even half the amount would be fine. But after collecting the money, the cleaner did not give the medicine to Ron. Instead, he wrote a Mexican address and told Ron that the doctor there was an expert specializing in treating AIDS, and perhaps he could get the desired drugs there. Hearing this, Ron felt he had been played. He stretched out his fist and swung at the cleaner. But not only did he not touch the other party, but he also fell heavily to the ground himself. He struggled to stand up, but accompanied by bursts of ringing in his ears, he passed out again. When Ron woke up again, he found himself lying in the hospital. Here, he met Rayon, another patient suffering from AIDS. Rayon is a transgender woman. Ron detested Rayon very much and always insulted her at every turn. Rayon had a gentle personality. No matter how Ron mocked her, she didn't say a word. Even when Ron had a calf cramp, she would actively step forward to help. But Ron really didn't want to have anything to do with Rayon. That night, he left the hospital and decided to go to Mexico to find the doctor. But when he returned home, he found that his door had been locked by someone else, and the wall was covered with insulting words. Obviously, the neighbors knew he was sick and didn't want him to continue living there. And this overwhelming malice completely enraged Ron. He stood on the street, cursing loudly, then picked up a shotgun to break in, took all his savings, and left this sad place. Today is already the 29th day, and there is only one day left before the doctor's death declaration. Ron stopped the car, took off his sunglasses, and after thinking for a moment, he slowly reached for his pistol, feeling he should personally end these final moments. But Ron never took that step. Instead, it made him more determined to live to the end. At this time, he remembered the address the cleaner gave him. He wanted to seize this last hope and fight with all his might. Ron dragged his extremely weak body and staggered to the doctor. The first thing he said was that he wanted to buy AZT. Looking at Ron's frail appearance, doctor. Vass didn't explain much to him, but immediately called a nurse to arrange for Ron to be hospitalized. 3 years ago, doctor, Vass had his license revoked for opposing AZT. He told Ron that AZT would indeed kill the virus cells in the body, but it would also kill the good cells. Before the virus cells disappeared completely, the body's immune system would completely collapse. It was precisely because of the previous use of AZT that Ron was so weak at this time. So weak that even a small cold could make Ron die immediately. So, doctor, Vass formulated a new treatment plan for Ron. The first thing to do was not to directly fight AIDS, but to improve Ron's physical condition first. Only with a good immune system will the virus not occupy the body so quickly. And precisely through Dr. Vass's 3-month treatment, Ron's body really improved. Not only did the T cells in his body rise, but his spirit and complexion also returned to their best state. The drugs Dr. Vass used were peptide T and DDC. Peptide T is a protein, completely non-toxic, and can regulate Ron's immune system faster. DDC is an antiviral drug similar to AZT, but the advantage is that DDC has less physical and chemical toxicity. Only when the two match can the best treatment effect be achieved. The AIDS patients in the hospital survived on these two drugs. It's just a pity that DDC is an unapproved drug in the United States. Hearing this, Ron immediately had an idea. He decided to take the medicine from here to the United States to sell. Not only could he save more people, but he could also make a big profit. But no one dared to attempt smuggling medical supplies so blatantly. However, as a bull rider, Ron came up with a good idea in just the time it takes to take a leak. In order to avoid customs inspection, he specially disguised himself as a priest, but the experienced customs officer quickly saw a clue on Ron. But seeing that Ron was a priest, he could only ask people from the FDA to come and check. The agents from the Drug Administration warned Ron that smuggling medical supplies was a serious felony, and that even for personal use, he was only allowed to bring a 90-day supply at most. And Ron was carrying more than 3 kilograms of pills.
Hand to God, I promise to take every single one of these pills myself. My life depends on it.
In the end, with Ron's superb acting skills, he successfully captured the other party's sympathy. But how to sell these drugs became a huge difficulty Ron had to face. Because he is not homosexual himself and has had no contact with this group, everyone was extremely defensive when they saw Ron, not to mention that what he sold were drugs not approved by the state. Even if he took the initiative to promote them at the AIDS support center, no patients were willing to buy them. Meanwhile, the AZT experiment in the hospital also had preliminary diagnostic results. Dr. Eve found that although the mortality rate of patients using AZT was indeed lower than that of patients using ordinary vitamins, the white blood cells in patients who had used AZT were significantly reduced. Such a treatment plan was just pushing patients into another channel of death. Dr. Eve angrily reported to Dr. Savard. But Dr. Savard said that as long as it is effective against the HIV virus, it counts as a specific drug. Eve felt angry but powerless about her superior's irresponsible approach, and Ron also earned his first bucket of gold through his own efforts. But just when he was seriously counting the money, Rayon appeared. Rayon's purpose for this trip was to buy medicine from Ron. And as soon as she opened her mouth, she wanted a quantity for 20 people, but the condition was to give her a 30% commission. Ron didn't want to share his results, but he couldn't bear to lose the big customer of 20 people. After some bargaining, he finally gave Rayon a 25% commission. And Rayon did not disappoint Ron's expectations. The drugs were sold out very quickly. During this period, Ron not only changed his view of Rayon, but also personally came to the gay bar he used to hate the most. Through contact with these people, he found that this group was not as annoying as imagined. Instead, compared with those former fair-weather friends, the gazes between them appeared more sincere. Considering that selling medicine illegally like this was not a long-term solution after all, Ron suddenly thought of a brilliant plan after repeated pondering. Establish a Dallas Buyers Club, collect money by joining the club membership, and then sell medicine in the form of giving it away as a gift. For just $400, you can get a full month's supply of medicine, but the premise is that you need to sign a disclaimer. If something goes wrong after taking the medicine, Ron is not responsible. At first, Rayon was worried that no one would be willing to bid $400 at a time. But at this time, the AZT that had undergone human experiments just went on the market, and the annual treatment cost of up to $10,000 discouraged the vast majority of patients. It was this opportunity that allowed Ron's club to welcome customers very quickly. They were an elderly couple who only had a preliminary understanding of Ron's medicine, but they really couldn't afford the hospital's AZT, so they could only come to Ron to try their luck. And when they learned that Ron was also a patient, the defense in their hearts was completely dropped. Since then, a long queue quickly formed at the entrance of Ron's club. More and more patients came because of its reputation, and the business grew bigger and bigger. Even the patients from the hospital before ran over to join. But $400 is a huge sum for some people, and Ron was never lenient about this.
Let's get this straight. Membership, $400. If you're a member, you get the meds. If you're not a member, you don't. Got it? I'm not running a goddamn charity.
The next day, Ron and Rayon went to the supermarket to shop together, but they encountered a former friend. After a burst of greetings, the friend noticed Rayon beside Ron immediately began to make verbal jokes and showed a disgusted face and an unfriendly gesture. This immediately enraged Ron.
Give him a good one. Give him a good one. Come on back to your miserable life.
Ron's subtle change in attitude moved Rayon very much. Those marginalized people abandoned by mainstream society never craved pity and sympathy, but respect and recognition. With the continuous expansion of Ron's career, new problems also followed. The medication supply in Mexico could no longer meet the growing demand, and the club's operation fell into a predicament. Helpless, Ron could only embark on a journey to find medicine again. After some twists and turns, he finally found a new source of medicine. But just as he successfully returned to Dallas, the long journey completely overdrew his body. He held on to his last trace of strength, rushed into a public restroom, and tremblingly injected himself with a dose of the new drug. However, the effect of the new drug was too violent. Ron's body couldn't bear it at all. The violent reaction made his vision go black, and he finally fainted on the cold public toilet floor and lost consciousness. When he woke up again, he found that he had been sent to the hospital. To make matters worse, people from the FDA also heard the news and came. The man who had previously been fooled by Ron's superb acting was so furious that he wanted to arrest Ron and confiscated the medicine he was carrying. However, Ron did not back down because of this. He set out once again to search for new sources of medicine. Traveling through many countries, he went through hardships and encountered countless cold words and refusals. But he never gave up hope. Through unremitting efforts, Ron successfully found a new source of medicine and got the club running again. On this day, Dr. Eve came famously and walked into Ron's club. It was she who diagnosed Ron with AIDS. However, when she saw those patients who had been sentenced to death by the hospital but were now standing alive in front of her, her heart received a huge shock. Dr. Eve had to admit that the drugs provided by Ron were indeed more effective than AZT. Her heart began to shake and she began to question the medical system she had always believed in. Meanwhile, the scene inside the hospital was completely different. Dr. Severed walked through the empty ward with a gloomy face. Once, these wards were full of patients. They were the hospital's economic pillar and the report card of his career. Now these patients have left the hospital one after another and turned to Ron's club. Dr. Sevard felt that his authority and interests were threatened, and he decided to take action. He reported Ron's club to multiple regulatory agencies, accusing it of unlawfully distributing medical supplies. As expected, the Dallas club was soon raided, all the medication was confiscated, and Ron faced heavy fines. On March 11, 1987, the Drug Administration issued new regulations to curb the private sale of medication. If patients want to buy medicine, they must have a prescription from a doctor. The introduction of this new regulation changed Ron's drug sales from unapproved to illegal. Worse, his drug inventory had long been sold out. Members began to run out of medicine, their savings were exhausted, and the club's rent became a problem. Just as he was worrying about this, the elderly couple came to Ron. They offered their house for him to use free of charge and said they wanted nothing in return. This selfless support deeply moved Ron and made him more determined to continue the fight. In order to save the club on the verge of collapse, Rayon made a difficult decision. She put back on her long-lost men's clothing and summoned up the courage to see her father, whom she had not contacted for many years. Although the father detested Rayon's identity in every way, when he saw Rayon wasting away due to AIDS, his heart was extremely grief-stricken. The bond of blood could not be cut after all. The father finally satisfied Rayon's request and gave her a sum of funds. Rayon returned to the club with the money given by her father and solved Ron's urgent need. However, Ron questioned the source of the money. He stared at Rayon, his tone filled with worry.
I sold my life insurance policy. Not like I'm gonna need it anyway.
Due to the failure to take medicine on time for a long time, Rayon's physical condition went from bad to worse. Ron was burning with anxiety and ran around looking for drugs. But under the new regulations, the prescription sheet became the biggest problem facing them. Without a doctor's prescription, they couldn't legally obtain drugs at all. Ron found Dr. Eve again, hoping she could help write a prescription. But Dr. Eve was powerless about this. Ron had expected her to answer this way, so as soon as he entered the door, he covered her eyes with his hat. He cleverly diverted Eve's attention and took the opportunity to quickly take a few prescription sheets from the table. With this prescription sheet symbolizing the hope of survival, Ron immediately set off for Mexico. But as soon as he left the United States, Rayon's condition began to deteriorate rapidly because she had gone too long without medication. Facing death, Rayon felt deep fear in her heart. Her boyfriend couldn't bear to see Rayon tortured by the disease, so he took her to the hospital. At this time, Ron also arrived in Mexico. He found Dr. Vass, hoping to find alternative drugs here. Dr. Vass first showed him a magazine, which was a research journal from a French medical team. It clearly stated that AZT is too toxic for the vast majority of AIDS patients and cannot achieve long-term therapeutic effects. But the United States deliberately blocked this news, making AZT the only AIDS-specific drug that can be sold in the United States. Then Dr. Vass showed Ron another research result of his own. That is, in the process of turning from a cocoon into a butterfly, caterpillars secrete a liquid that can protect themselves. After extracting this liquid, it can be used as an antiviral drug for the human body. And this liquid is completely harmless to the human body. Just as Ron was seriously looking at the caterpillar, the flashing lights in the next room attracted his attention. Driven by curiosity, he walked over slowly. After turning on the light, the room was full of butterflies dancing wantonly. After Ron came in, the butterflies stayed on his body. He opened his arms to welcome the kiss of the butterflies. At this moment, he seemed to have received some kind of new life. On the return flight, Ron carefully signed the medical prescription sheet. Unbeknownst to him, at this time, Rayon was already lying on the hospital bed, dying. Doctor. Eve didn't give her AZT because at this moment Eve no longer believed in the efficacy of AZT. But despite this, Ron received the bad news as soon as he returned home. He rushed to the hospital without stopping, but it was too late by the time he arrived. Ron stood blankly at the door, and the pain in his heart surged to his chest. Even though he had already brought the medicine back, Rayon would never be able to take it again. Rayon's death was something Ron simply couldn't accept, and he grabbed Dr. Sevard by the collar, cursing him as a murderer. Rayon's death devastated Ron. Together they established the Dallas Buyers Club and witnessed the rise and fall of the club. When he was at his wit's end, it was Rayon who extended a helping hand to him. Until Rayon's body was hollowed out, it remained so. Even if he was looked down upon for walking with Rayon, Rayon endowed him with the purest true feelings. He even felt now that the existence of the Dallas Buyers Club was meaningless. The next day, when he looked at the patients standing outside the house who couldn't afford to join or buy medicine, Ron gave the medicine to them for free. And he told his assistant that if the medicine on hand was given away, he would sell the car and continue to deliver medicine. He used to only want to make money. Now he has become a savior. After that, Ron gave the magazine with the French AZT research results to Eve to check. At this moment, Eve's faith completely collapsed. The next day, she privately asked the nurse to have the AZT dosage injected into all patients, copied the research report, and quietly placed it in the patient's rest area. She knew that what she was doing might get her into trouble or even cost her job, but her heart could no longer remain silent. Every document was her cry for the truth and her way of honoring Rayon and all the other lives that had been lost. Meanwhile, Ron learned from his assistant that the Drug Administration was about to heavily promote AZT at the Centers for Disease Control. Hearing this, Ron broke into the venue with an IV bottle hanging. Ignoring his weak body, he publicly contended with the other party.
Let's go. Maybe one day you'll get off your ass and do your job.
I need you to leave. Let's go.
His voice, though hoarse, was full of power. Every sentence he spoke was like a loud slap in the face to those high and mighty faces. On the other side, the hospital discovered Eve's behavior of secretly helping patients. The director wanted her to resign voluntarily, but Eve didn't indulge him.
You'll have to fire me. Y'all go fuck yourselves.
At night, two people defeated by reality approached each other for the first time. At this time, a hug and a word of comfort became the reason for the other party to continue to persist. The world is too big and their strength is too small. They didn't even know what kind of road they would face next. Time flew to 6 months later. Ron took the Drug Administration to court. In court, Ron demanded the repeal of the law that prohibited unauthorized medication without a doctor's permission. The judge expressed sympathy for Ron and severely condemned the Drug Administration's heavy-handed tactics. But despite this, due to the lack of support from legal clauses, the court rejected Ron's appeal.
I'm sorry, this case is hereby dismissed.
On the plane back, Ron frowned tightly and said nothing. He returned to the club that was about to be disbanded in frustration. But when Ron pushed open the door, what greeted him was a burst of vigorous applause. Although Ron lost the lawsuit, he became a hero in the hearts of the patients. At the end of the film, Ron rides the most aggressive bull in the arena. He wants to challenge staying on the bull's back for 8 seconds. At that moment, he was the matador of his own destiny. He tightly grasped the rope on the bull's back, just like tightly grasping his own destiny. This is a true story. From the late 1980s to the 1990s, the conservative government and the prejudice of American society against AIDS patients made the research and development of AIDS drugs inactive. American AIDS patients took to the streets again and again to protest the government's disregard for life and the government's lengthy AIDS drug review process. This is also a famous rights protection movement in American history. The final result of the struggle of Ron and the AIDS population was that the AZT drug was improved and widely used, saving millions of lives. So if a person only has 30 days to live, should they lie down and wait for death, figure out a way to struggle, or be like Ron, who, even with only one breath left, wants to kick the door of this world hard. This cowboy relied on his unyielding spirit to forge a path of survival for himself and countless fellow patients. He was forced to become a partner with a person he originally couldn't stand the most. On the road of struggling to survive, he also forgot about men or women, homosexuals or heterosexuals, and only remembered that they were all people who wanted to live. So, in fact, the meaning of living is not just to take a breath, but to live with dignity and do one's best. Those prejudices we think are right are nothing in the face of life and death. Sometimes those wrong things may not necessarily be right.